What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Right before I get into this video, I want to remind you guys to hit the notification button if you haven't hit the notification button to get reminders whenever a video of mine drops. And also, if you're watching this video and haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to Too Raw for TV, and also hit the like button. All right, this video is sort of similar to the video that I did maybe a month ago now, as far as the Extreme Team versus the Dream Team. The Extreme Team is a team that was pretty much created by one of my subscribers, Daryl Sloan. Like me, he's a basketball historian. And the Extreme Team has been pitted various times against Olympic teams and modern day teams. So in this video, the rosters has been expanded to 15 players. All right, so instead of 12-man teams, this is a 15-man team. Now, in this situation, I want to acknowledge the players who were left off the Extreme Team, and you'll begin to see why the Extreme Team always seems to have an edge in these things. The players that were left off, that didn't make the cut, were Walt Frazier, Earl Monroe, John Havlicek. Now, listen to me. John Havlicek didn't make the cut. John Havlicek, Willis Reed, David Thompson, Skywalker, Bob McAdoo, Walt Bellamy, the great Bob Cousy, the great Sam Jones, Billy Cunningham, Hal Greer, Dave DeBuscher, Jerry Lucas, uh, Bob Lanier, I think I might have said his name, Bill Sharman, Wes Unseld, Paul Arizin, Connie Hawkins, Spencer Haywood, Tommy Heinsohn, Dan Essel, George Mikan, and Lenny Wilkins. Those are the players that didn't make the cut for the Extreme Team. Now, this is the roster, the 15-man roster for the Extreme Team. Overall, offense, they're 100. Defense, 100. Overall, 100. The coach of the Extreme Team is Mr. Light 'em Up himself, Red Auerbach. Let me tell you a little bit about the game of basketball. All right, at center you have Wilt Chamberlain, 7'1", 310 pounds. You have at power forward, essentially a secondary center, but Bill Russell, 6'10", 240 pounds. Elgin Baylor, 6'5", 225 pounds at the wing. Essentially, you have a point guard backcourt, but usually, even though Jerry West played the majority of his career technically at the point guard position, but usually he's listed as a shooting guard. You have Jerry West, who was actually 6'4", even though he's listed as 6'2". 6'4", 185 pounds. And at the point, you have Oscar Robertson, 6'5", and 220 pounds. Absolutely huge in his era, as far as size is concerned, his position. The bench is constructed of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, of course, center, 7'2", 225 pounds. I like to think that this is the Milwaukee Bucks version of Kareem. All right, you have the doctor, Julius Erving, 6'7", 200 pounds. You have Bob Pettit, the greatest player of the 1950s, at 6'9". And even though Daryl has him listed at 209 pounds, I would push him at 235 because Bob Pettit got into weightlifting. That's probably his collegiate weight. But when Bob Pettit got in the NBA, he started working out in off seasons, working on his face up game, and Bob Pettit got up to about 235 pounds or so at his biggest. At shooting guard, you have George Gervin coming off the bench, 6'7", 180 pounds. Rick Barry, 6'7", 206 pounds. Nate Tiny Archibald, 6'1", 160, 165 pounds. The Big E, Elvin Hayes, 6'9", 235 pounds. Pete Maravich, 6'5", about 200 pounds. Nate Thurman, 6'11", 250, 60 pounds. And Artis Gilmore, 7'2", 265 pounds of absolute brute raw muscle. So with Artis Gilmore and Wilt Chamberlain, you have the two strongest players in the history of the NBA. And you got Bob Pettit, who was no slouch. You know what I'm saying? Very strong for his size. Like I said, he got into weightlifting and really expanded his game um, as he got into the NBA. So the modern day team is Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, James Harden, Steph Curry. The bench is Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kawhi Leonard, Damian Lillard, Nikola Jokic, Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, Karl Anthony Towns, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, and LaMarcus Aldridge. Uh, and with this team, it doesn't have a coach listed, so I have to take, I guess, the most successful coach recently in the NBA. I guess that would be Steve Kerr. All right. So right there's already a huge coaching advantage for the extreme team because Steve Kerr has shown to me that he can be severely outcoached at times. We even saw that in the finals. All right, so so um, you know what? I was wrong about Bob Pettit too. I had something mixed up about him. Actually, I think he worked on his post up game as he matured into the NBA. He worked on his post up game. He couldn't play with his back to the basket. I was wrong about that. I knew I said something wrong. It was backwards. He worked on his post up game. He could always play face up, but he didn't have the physicality nor the wherewithal initially to be very good playing with his back to the basket. But he worked on that and got very good at that. Um, but anyway, how do I see this matchup? Now, I'm doing this video kind of a little bit on the fly, so bear with me. I'm looking at these matchups, looking at the roster. Um, as usual, as usual, uh, the modern day team has a significant advantage in the perimeter as far as outside shooting. When you look at this team, Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Steph Curry, and James Harden all have the ability, especially the backcourt, Harden, who's about a 36, 37% three-point shooter, and Curry, who's a remarkable 43, 44% career three-point shooter. LeBron James is not shabby at 34% for his career. I think he's getting close to 35%, so he's not bad at all. Um, Kawhi Leonard can knock him down. Lillard is a tremendous three-point shooter and a deep three-point shooter. Jokic can hit the three. Klay Thompson's one of the all-time greats. Irving is not shabby. I think he's like 37, 38% for his career. Karl Anthony Towns can hit the three. Kevin Durant's a 38% career three-point shooter. Draymond Green is getting his touch back. Aldridge can hit him down, occasionally. Um, yeah, the big advantage that the modern day team is going to have is outside shooting. And if you're playing by the rules of today's NBA, not as physical, defense is kind of hampered, a lot of pick and roll. Ah, you know, I'm looking at the extreme team, and they really only have one guy, possibly two, that are knockdown shooters. Jerry West and Rick Barry. Um, that's about it. When I say outside shooters, I'm talking about 3-point range. Maybe Pete Maravich too, but he's a little more streaky. Um, and with this team, with them having Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Karl Anthony Towns, although I don't trust Towns sometimes. Um, the extreme team still has the advantage with Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Kareem, and Nate Thurman and Artis Gilmore. But if you're taking out the physicality of the game, you know what I'm saying, it kind of neutralizes them a little bit. I'm not saying these guys aren't skilled, they can't do other things, especially a guy like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And I think in this scenario, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar would flourish because Jabbar did not love physical play. It could rile him up. Usually in those incidents where you've seen Kareem getting, frustrated and want to fight, is usually because he felt guys were being too physical with him. He hated playing against Artis Gilmore, who game was just totally predicated on physicality. I could, but I could see Kareem flourishing in this style more. Offensively, I could see the way that basketball is played now. It could kind of hurt a little bit some of the bigs as far as offensive scoring. So, um, yeah, in this scenario, I can kind of see the modern day team possibly winning this game if they're hitting their outside shots. If they hit like, uh, anywhere near 23 pointers in the game, you know what I'm saying, especially more than that, I could see Steph Curry really going off in this scenario. Jerry West is about the same size as Curry. If you put Oscar on him, Oscar is bigger. But I don't think Oscar was quite the defensive player that Jerry West was. So yeah, in this situation, like I said, defenses are kind of handcuffed now, so it's more like lateral movement, foot speed. I could see Curry going off. I could see LeBron James winning his matchup against Elgin Baylor. Baylor's a great player, but um, yeah, if you're playing by the modern day rules, then I could see the younger team winning this scenario. Um, I can just see it. I could see Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving. You know, I'm not necessarily worried about the bigs going off, but I'm worried about some of these perimeter guys. You know what I'm saying? And Kevin Durant's always going to be a matchup nightmare. He's always going to be a matchup nightmare, and I just don't see it. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you're playing by the rules as far as like hand checking and all is legal. If you're playing like by how the rules were in the '90s, the way the game was played in the '90s, that changes things significantly for. Now, one thing I want to say is I never want to doubt Red Auerbach. Red Auerbach was a tremendous coach. I think he's the second most successful coach in NBA history, and he's the greatest architect because unlike Phil Jackson, he could go from the coaching role and go in the front office and build a championship team. So his mind, for the game was legendary. So I can't bet against Red Auerbach, even though on paper, in that scenario, I see an advantage for the Millennial team. I call them that, the Millennial team. I can't. It's hard to bet against Coach Red Auerbach. But if you go about this situation, the old rules, then I see a significant advantage for the extreme team. Nobody's going to stop Wilt. All right, Bill Russell's going to be. I mean, Wilt and Bill Russell. A lot of people don't understand that they were friends. Um, the, the 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 myth of them being enemies. They did harbor grudges against each other. Well, really, Wilt against Bill Russell because of something that Bill Russell said about Wilt and questioning Wilt's heart and basically calling him a liar after Wilt wasn't able to get back into that fourth quarter of the Game 7 and 69 finals. But before that, they were really great friends. They didn't make up before Wilt Chamberlain's death. But I think they would be defensive monsters in the front court. And with defense is not quite as handcuffed, I could see, you know, uh, I could see this front court, like I said, Artis Gilmore, Nate Thurman, Elvin Hayes, Bob Pettit. And I forgot to mention Bob Pettit. I think Pettit would kind of thrive in today's NBA as well. And I think he would do well in this series. Uh, I think Julius Erving would be phenomenal too in today's NBA. Although he didn't really have the greatest jump shot in the world. But yeah, I just look at this team in their front court and the old rules and the old style play. It'll be too much. It'll be too much for the millennials. You know what I'm saying? Um, the way that the old rules were, the way the old rules were, I can't see a guy, for instance, like James Harden being able to just hold the ball and do what he's doing. You know what I'm saying? Um, nah, the game was more like bigs were more offensively involved back then, and I can't see a guy like James Harden. Well, anyway, on this team, he wouldn't be doing it anyway. Um, I think Klay Thompson would still be great. You know what I'm saying? I think Klay Thompson would be great, but and Kevin Durant is a superb talent. You know what I'm saying? But I think their front court is just too much, man. Their front court is too much, and Kawhi Leonard. You know, Kawhi Leonard would probably wreak havoc on defense. You know what I'm saying? But if they're playing like by '90s rules, that's going to handcuff some of these outside guys. Like some guys like Leonard, some guys like Curry. When they're hot and pulling up from 27, 28 feet, whatever, there's nothing really much you can do in that scenario. But if you're playing by the old rules with hand checking and arm, being able to put your arms on guys and being more physical and kind of run these guys off the line, then that can kind of neutralize some of that shit, especially with guys like James Harden. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's going to force them to have to do other things, and it's going to have to force them to try to, score in mid range. And some of these guys' mid range jumpers are a little bit suspect, or it's going to try to force them to go inside, and that's something that they're not going to be able to do too well with the extreme team. Now, when you have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bob Pettit, Elvin Hayes, Nate Thurman, Artis Gilmore, Bill Russell, and Will Chamberlain, that ain't gonna work. That's not gonna work with this team. And also another thing that's missing from this team. You remember the last video I did, the the more modern day team had Kobe Bryant on their roster. This team does not have Kobe Bryant, and I'm not questioning the heart of this team, but sometimes you have to look at the psychological aspect of these things too. And I can see Bill Russell. You got Jerry West on this team. I, you got nasty Nate Thurman, Nate the Great, Artis Gilmore. Like I said, I can see a lot of these millennial team dudes complaining about the physicality. If they're playing by the old rules, and they're complaining these guys are playing too physical and shit. Why is this not a foul? I can see Draymond Green getting upset about certain shit and getting out of his game and, not playing basketball but being more concerned about, you know what I'm saying? I could just see the millennial team more than the extreme team getting out of sorts. And yeah, I can just see. Oh boy, I can see Oscar Robertson controlling the tempo. I can see Oscar Robertson controlling the game. People just forget how great that guy was, man. You know what I'm saying? And just the basketball IQ of these guys. I see the extreme team winning this game, winning this in this scenario. If you're playing by the old rules, if you're playing by the contemporary rules of the day, that gives the millennial team a chance, a big chance, because it handcuffs, in my opinion at least, the strengths, the big strength of the extreme team, which is uh, their unsurpassed strength at the center position, the power forward position. But that's pretty much it, man. I think it depends a little bit on the rules. If it's the rules of today, despite the fact that I see Red Auerbach doing everything he can to try to counter the weaknesses of his squad, which would be potentially quickness, actually quickness all around. Not to say that the extreme team isn't athletic and doesn't have quickness, but some of these guys today are just exceptionally quick. Uh, the quickness and outside shooting of the millennial team, I think, will be just a little bit too much. But if you're playing, and I see like ultimately a 10-point victory or something like that, I see like a 160 to 150 victory or something like that. But if you're playing by the rules of the 1990s, much more physical game, and especially if you're playing in the style of the old NBA where the bigs were more involved, and the bigs would get more involved if this is more of a hard hat type game, then I could see the extreme team potentially blowing out the millennials, something more like 130 to 110 or something like that. The scoring will be lower too because of the defense, 135, 115 or something like that. But that's just my take on it. And tell me what you guys think, man, because this is not just a one resolution type thing. You know what I'm saying? I welcome all opinions on this one. Also, if you like my content, you know what I'm saying? If you choose to, please, if you choose to, please use the apps below to donate to this channel, either the PayPal, the Cash App. And if you also support this channel, please subscribe to my Patreon for only $2 per month. On the Patreon, we will talk about stuff that I can't talk about on YouTube for obvious reasons. Thank you for listening.